Welcome to the Bookworm Duo, where we explore a variety of books. Let's get started.
Today, we're tackling a really significant book, one that's generated a lot of discussion. Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation.
That subtitle says a lot. How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. Heavy stuff.
It really is. And our goal today for this deep dive is basically to walk through Haidt's argument as he lays it out. Follow the story he's telling, piece by piece.
Yeah, understand the core narrative, the sequence of his points, and the evidence he uses. Get that big picture.
Exactly. And the core issue he's looking at is this, well, alarming increase in anxiety, depression, self-harm, even suicide, primarily among Gen Z.
So kids born after about 1995, and the timing seems crucial. He really focuses on the early 2010s as when things took a turn.
Right. And his main idea, his thesis, is that this is tied to what he calls the Great Rewiring of Childhood.
Driven by two big things, he says.
Two main factors, yeah. First, the rise of smartphones and social media really taking over kids' lives.
And second, this sort of parallel decline in, old-fashioned free play and independence. Kids just not getting out and doing things on their own as much.
It's that combination he thinks is key. The book itself is structured pretty clearly in 4 parts.
Okay.
Part 1 lays out the mental health trends, the data showing the problem. Part 2 looks at childhood itself, what it's meant to be, and how it got disrupted.
Got it. Then part 3.
That digs into the specific harms he sees coming from this new sort of phone-based childhood.
And finally, part 4 is about solutions. What can we actually do? Families, schools, society.
Right. So it covers the problem, the cause, the effects, and potential fixes. Let's jump into part 1 then, the mental health plunge.
Okay, the evidence. What does he start with?
Well, he brings in data on major depressive episodes for U.S. teens, specifically ages 12 to 17. This is from the National Survey on Drug Use and Health.
And what does it show?
A really sudden, quite substantial increase, starting right around 2012. It's not a slow creep. It's more like a sharp turn upwards.
2012. That date seems like it's going to be important.
It is. He comes back to it. And it's not just teens. He also shows data from the American College Health Association for U.S. undergrads.
Similar trend?
Yep, a similar surge in diagnoses, especially anxiety and depression, happening throughout the 2010s.
Okay. Any other data points that stood out to you here?
Yeah, there's an interesting bit where he looks at feelings of nervousness across different generations.
Oh, right.
And you see this really sharp rise in the youngest group, Gen Z, as they start showing up in the surveys around 2014.
But not so much in older generations.
Much smaller increases for millennials. And older generations are relatively stable. That age-specific pattern is pretty telling, he argues. Suggests something unique hit this younger group.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then there's the really tough data on suicide rates.
Very tough, particularly for young adolescent girls. He shows the rate started rising around 2008, but there was a huge surge from 2012 onwards.
How big a surge?
Between 2010 and 2021, he cites a 167% increase for that group. It's staggering.
Wow. And is this just a U.S. phenomenon?
No, and that's a crucial part of his argument. He brings in international data.
Like what?
Trends in self-harm among UK teens, mental health hospitalizations for Australian teens, different countries, different systems, but you see similar patterns.
A marked increase around the same time.
Exactly, starting roughly 2010 to 2015. This synchronization across countries really points towards some kind of common underlying cause.
So what does he suggest that cause is at this stage?
He starts connecting it to the shift in technology. He acknowledges kids had basic cell phones earlier, right? But the game changer was the smartphone.
The iPhone coming out in 2007, Android following.
Right. And then social media platforms adding things like the like and share buttons around 2009. He argues that really changed the dynamics online, made it more constant, more performative, maybe more toxic.
He wasn't just calling and texting anymore. It was this whole immersive social world in your pocket.
Precisely. He does address other potential factors too, things people bring up like, climate change anxiety or the 2008 financial crisis.
And what does he say about those?
He acknowledges they're real stressors, but he argues the timing and the specific nature of this adolescent mental health crisis doesn't quite fit them as the primary driver. The sharp turn around 2012 affecting teens across different countries. It points elsewhere for him.
Okay, so he's laid out the problem with some pretty compelling and worrying data. That takes us to part 2 then. What happened to childhood?
Exactly. Now he shifts from what happened to why. He starts thinking about the nature of childhood development itself.
And how it's maybe been thrown off course.
Right. He talks about sensitive periods in development, times when our brains are particularly primed to learn certain skills.
Like language acquisition. Right. Easier when you're young.
That's the classic example. Puberty is another key period. He highlights lots of brain rewiring happening, making teens adaptable, but also maybe more vulnerable to sustained stress.
Okay. He also introduces this idea of discover mode versus defend mode. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. It's based on two core motivational systems in the brain. The behavioral activation system, or BAS, drives discover mode. It pushes us to explore, seek rewards, engage with the world.
Like the brain's go explore system.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Then there's the behavioral inhibition system, or BIS, which drives defend mode. That's more about scanning for threats, avoiding danger, being cautious.
The watch out system.
Exactly. And Haidt's hypothesis is that Gen Z is ending up spending too much time stuck in defend mode.
And why would that be? How does he connect that?
He links it strongly to the decline of free play. This started way back in the 80s, he argues, and really picked up speed in the 90s.
Driven by what?
Increased parental fears, largely. Fears about kidnapping, predators, the whole stranger danger focus really ramped up.
Even though statistically the risk hadn't necessarily skyrocketed.
Right. But the perception of risk did. And interestingly, this coincided with the rise of home computers, offering a seemingly safer indoor alternative for kids' time.
So less time outside, unstructured, figuring things out on their own.
Precisely. And Haidt really emphasizes how vital that kind of play is. It's where you learn social skills, negotiation, risk assessment, resilience.
When the stakes are low, right, falling off your bike hurts, but it's a learning experience.
Exactly. Mistakes in play are usually low cost. This ties into another concept he uses, anti-fragility.
Things that get stronger from stress.
Yeah, like your immune system getting stronger after fighting off a bug, or muscles growing after exercise. He uses the analogy of a young tree needing wind to develop strong roots. Kids need manageable stressors and challenges to develop resilience.
And the argument is that overprotection prevents this.
Yes. And he contrasts the real world, where you build anti-fragility through manageable physical and social risks, with the virtual world.
Where mistakes can blow up.
Right. Online mistakes can go viral, lead to huge social consequences, public shaming. The cost can feel disproportionately high, which might discourage risk-taking and encourage that defend mode.
This connects to safetyism, doesn't it?
It does. He talks about safety becoming this almost sacred value, leading to overprotection in the real world, removing monkey bars, banning tag, parents hovering constantly.
Which, paradoxically, might make kids less able to cope with challenges and anxiety later on.
That's the argument. He's careful to distinguish this from psychological safety, which is positive, creating spaces where people feel safe to speak up and disagree intellectually. Safetyism is more about eliminating all risk, especially physical.
He also mentions how parents' ideas have changed about when kids are ready for independence.
Big time. He points out how parents today often feel their kids need supervision for things they themselves did alone at a much younger age.
And this ties back to attachment theory, too, right? The secure base idea.
Yeah. A secure attachment gives kids the confidence to explore from a safe base. But if the parent is always there, maybe trying to smooth every path, the kid doesn't get to venture out, build competence, maybe stays stuck near the base, metaphorically speaking, stuck in defend mode.
And all this is happening or being amplified during puberty, that sensitive period for brain development.
Exactly. So he sets up this picture. Childhood was already changing with this rise of safetyism and decline of free play. That was the first experience blocker.
Hindering real-world development.
Right. But the mental health crisis didn't explode, he argues, until the second experience blocker arrived, the smartphone, ushering in the phone-based childhood.
Which leads us directly into part 3, the harms of that phone-based childhood.
Exactly. So now we get specific about how the smartphone and the constant connectivity it brings has negatively impacted adolescent development.
It's become so central, hasn't it, replacing a lot of face-to-face time.
Completely. And he outlines 4 main categories of harm. He calls them the 4 foundational harms.
Okay, what are they?
Social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and addiction.
Let's take those one by one. Social deprivation, that's pretty straightforward, right? Less time hanging out in person.
Yeah, less time physically with friends means fewer opportunities to practice those nuanced social skills, read body language, navigate real-time interactions. He cites data showing declines in teens spending time with friends face-to-face.
Okay. Sleep deprivation. We hear a lot about that.
Definitely linked to phone use, especially social media late at night. Blue light exposure, the fear of missing out, keeping them online. Sleep is critical for teen brain development, mood regulation, learning. He shows data on increasing sleep deprivation among teens.
Makes sense. Attention fragmentation.
This is about the constant barrage of notifications, the multitasking, the quick switching between apps. It trains the brain away from deep focus and sustained attention.
That brain drain idea you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, he discusses studies suggesting even just having your phone nearby, even if it's off, can tax your cognitive resources because part of your brain is working to not check it. It interferes with developing executive functions, like planning and impulse control.
Okay, and the fourth one, addiction.
This is a big one. He talks about how these apps are designed to be addictive, using principles from behaviorism. Persuasive technology, they call it.
Like slot machines.
Exactly like slot machines. Variable ratio reinforcement. Unpredictable rewards, like likes or comments, keep you coming back, keep you scrolling. It hijacks the brain's reward pathways.
He mentions Anna Lemke's work on addiction here, right?
Yes, explaining the neurobiology, how constant hits of dopamine from these apps can lead to a dopamine deficit state, where eventually nothing else feels good. You need the phone just to feel normal.
And it's hard for parents to manage, even if they try.
He gives examples of how kids find workarounds, secret accounts. It's a real challenge.
He then spends some time on why social media seems to have hit girls harder. What's the thinking there?
It's multifaceted. He points to the highly visual nature of platforms like Instagram and TikTok, leading to intense focus on appearance, constant social comparison.
Which can really damage body image and fuel anxiety.
Right. Also, the way emotions and mental health issues can sometimes spread contagiously within online networks seem to impact girls' networks more acutely.
Like trends or challenges related to mental health.
Potentially, yeah. Plus, girls report higher rates of cyberbullying, online harassment, and sexualization, forcing them into that defend mode more often.
And the nature of friendships changes too.
He suggests a shift for some girls from maybe a few deep, intimate friendships to a wider circle of weaker online ties, which can paradoxically increase feelings of loneliness.
Okay, so a combination of comparison, contagion, online harms, and altered friendships for girls. What about boys? He says it's more diffuse for them.
Yeah, he frames it more as a gradual retreat from the real world into the virtual one, often centered around video games and, significantly, online pornography.
Does he link porn use to specific harms?
He mentions associations between heavy consumption and lower satisfaction in real-life relationships for males. And he raises concerns that things like the metaverse or AI companions could deepen this disengagement from reality.
In video games. Obviously not all bad, but he sees a downside.
It's mainly about the opportunity cost. Excessive gaming can displace sleep, exercise, schoolwork, face-to-face socializing, the things crucial for development.
He also touches on a sort of spiritual dimension, doesn't he?
Briefly, yeah. He argues that a life dominated by the phone can crowd out experiences that foster a sense of meaning or connection beyond the self. Things like appreciating nature, quiet reflection, shared rituals, genuine empathy. Social media often pulls in the opposite direction, towards self-focus, performance, and judgment.
Okay, so that paints a pretty bleak picture of the harms, which brings us, thankfully, to part 4, what we must do now. Solutions.
Right. After diagnosing the problem, he offers prescriptions. He starts with this idea of collective action problems.
Why is that important here?
Because it explains why it's so hard for individual families to solve this alone. If all the other kids have smartphones, it's incredibly difficult for one family to hold out.
Like your kid feels left out, socially isolated.
Exactly. The individual rational choice, getting the phone to fit in, leads to a bad outcome for the group as a whole. Everyone gets pulled into this phone-based world earlier and more intensely.
So we need collective solutions. What are his big ones? He has 4 main reforms.
They're foundational ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Number 1, no smartphones before high school.
Yeah,
So
good.
wait until maybe age 14.
Okay. Number 2.
No social media before 16.
Yep.
He argues teen brains aren't ready for the intensity and complexity of these platforms before then.
Right. Number 3.
Phone-free schools. Get the phones out of the academic environment entirely, from bell to bell.
And number 4.
Far more unsupervised play and childhood independence, basically reversing the trends discussed in part 2, letting kids have more freedom in the real world.
Those are pretty big asks compared to current norms.
They are. He acknowledges it requires a significant shift. He then talks about how we might get there, looking at different actors. What can governments do?
What does he suggest?
Things like potentially raising the age of internet adulthood, the age at which companies can collect data or offer services without parental consent, to 16.
So aligning the law with his recommendation.
Right. And implementing effective age verification systems, though that's technically challenging and has privacy concerns. Maybe incentivizing real-world experiences, too.
Okay. What about schools, beyond just banning phones?
He advocates for schools becoming playful, actively building in more time for unstructured free play, recognizing its developmental value. He mentions specific examples, like that teacher Kevin Steinhardt. The idea is schools should be part of the solution, fostering real-world skills and interaction.
And he also mentions the issue of boys falling behind academically.
Yeah, he touches on needing to find ways to re-engage boys, perhaps steering them towards careers in fields like health, education, administration, librarianship, the heal professions, where male role models are also needed.
Interesting. Are there tools for parents he highlights?
Yes, he mentions the Let Grow project.
What's that?
It's a simple idea where kids get a homework assignment to do something new on their own walk to a friend's house, run an errand. It helps build confidence in the child and trust in the parent, a small step towards independence.
Seems practical, and he offers different advice based on age.
Right. For younger kids, say 6 to 13, the focus is really on delaying the smartphone as long as possible. Limit screen time, prioritize real-world play, get them outdoors, basic flip phones for communication if needed.
Makes sense. And for teens, 13 to 18.
Since they likely have phones, the focus shifts. Give them more real-world freedom and responsibility, maybe a part-time job. Set clear boundaries around phone use, especially social media. Talk to them openly about the risks, the persuasive design. Less about bans, more about guidance in building healthy habits.
And the collective action idea comes back here.
Yes, he emphasizes that every parent who delays the smartphone or grants more real-world independence isn't just helping their own kid. They're making it slightly easier for other families to do the same. They're helping shift the norm.
So in wrapping up, what's Haidt's final message?
He really brings it back to first principles. Humans evolved for millions of years in the real world. Childhood evolved for physical play, real communities, face-to-face interaction.
And this great rewiring to a phone-based life is?
A mismatch. A failed experiment, he argues. It's fostered anxiety, disconnection, loneliness. He's making a strong plea to consciously choose to return childhood to the real world.
A world of embodiment and real connection, not just virtual ones.
Exactly. He also points people to his website, anxiousgeneration.com, for more resources, data, and ways to connect with others, and afterbabble.com for his ongoing thoughts.
Well, it certainly gives us all a lot to think about regarding the world we're creating for young people. A really important deep dive today.
Definitely. It's a complex issue, and understanding his perspective is crucial, whether you agree with all of it or not.
Thanks for joining us. Subscribe for more bookish adventures and hit that like button if you enjoyed the ride. Don't forget to share the knowledge, spread the word.